All right, so we just listened to Slipknot's new album, The End, so far. Now we're gonna talk about it. I'll give you my review, little summarize, and then we'll go into a little deeper discussion with Jordan, and then give you our ratings. So I don't know if it's just because I'm not the biggest Slipknot fan. I like, they're not like bad or anything. I just, I like their greatest hits. I like Volume 3, like that whole album is really good, and they're self-titled. Everything else I'm just kind of, mixed on. So I don't know if it's because I'm just not a, massive Slipknot fan, but I don't think I understand a lot of the hate that this is getting. Um, I thought the majority, like a good majority of this album was actually pretty good. Um, I think, a couple songs here and there were a little too experimental. Specifically the first track. I think the first track is a weird way to start an album. I think it puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. That's probably like part of it. Because you just start out with like, what the fuck is going on? But honestly, like I said, a good majority of the tracks just they sound like Slipknot. I don't think it is a little bit, it is Slipknot plus. It is a little bit extra. As Jordan said during the review, this album does feel very proggy. There's a lot of like prog elements in there, especially with the synth. I think a lot of the synth that they use, especially like as outros in some of the songs and everything, just kind of makes it all blend together. And I think that gives it a lot of feeling, and a lot of the guitar work as well. Which, by the way, I really like the guitar work in this. I'd say this album feels very guitar centric. There's a lot of like pretty memorable riffs in here. I thought the guitar really stood out. And but not just the guitar either. Like the bass, you can hear the bass in pretty much every song. You can hear him doing his little stuff, um, and it sounded really nice. Drum work was good. Corey's vocals, nothing out of place there. Sounded like Corey. You could even hear the trash can. when they wanted to put it in there, and I think everything worked together pretty well. So some track notes I put on here. So again, the first track I think was the overall total weakest track. It was just a very experimental, very 1970s, felt very Ghost. Mars Volta, their new album that we reviewed, felt like that, and just like really didn't connect to a lot of the other songs. But I guess some of the other songs did also have just like little hints of that 70s feeling to it, like instrumental wise. Warranty was another weaker track for me. I think it's just because the lyrics on this album, a lot of the lyrics on this album are pretty weak point for me. I think it just might be his writing style. Just some of the metaphors, especially in that song specifically, just kind of fell off for me. I didn't enjoy that. And then the last track I was kind of hit or miss on, honestly. I'll come back to that in a second. Let me finish my other song. So Yin, I think was my favorite track on the album, and honestly, probably one of my favorite Slipknot tracks. I think that was a really good one. It started off a little weird. It was again a little experimental. It reminded me of like Deftones at first, but then once it like got into the chorus like was really good. Again, the guitar work was like really great, really memorable. It had some nice like melodic parts in there. I think that was a really great track, and I really like that one a lot. Let's see, Acidic. Acidic was weird. It was very like 90s, but in a grungy type of way. Like I said, it reminded me of like Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains. So that one was a little different. I could see some people saying that that's more of like a Stone Sour type thing, but what do I know? I'm not, H377 was arguably probably the most Slipknot song out of all this. It reminded me a lot of self-titled. He had the whole new metal like rapping almost style vocals and the scratches and everything on that felt very Slipknot. So, but again, a lot of the tracks felt like that. So what I was saying, I'm hit or miss on the last track. I think the last track was kind of weak, but it also ended well. So it was like a good ending in the fact that like it like had to play out and the little piano and all that stuff. So I think that worked, but I don't know if I would put a different track on there. Like maybe that Desaad was a pretty good one as well. For like an ending kind of feeling, it had like a little more of an epic feeling, especially because it kind of got heavier as it ended. I think that probably would have been probably the best ending for me. And just cut out the first track and the very last track. I think this album might have hit a lot more for people. I think. So some other notes here. There was a couple breakdowns in here, like actual like breakdowns. Especially Chapel Town Rag, I think was their first single. That one had was pretty groovy. And had the nice little breakdown on there. Medicine for the Dead kind of reminded me, parts of it reminded me of Tool. Especially again the guitar work. A lot of the guitar work just felt very proggy. Um, there's a lot of spooky imagery, which is kind of a Slipknot thing, but I kind of felt it a little extra in here, especially the synth wise. There was a lot of like, very creepy synths and stuff in the background, and on the outros too. Let's see. Again, the riffs. Just I think the guitar was probably the most standout for me in the entire album. I think he had a very very good presence. I'd say a negative for me here, for being Slipknot, a lot of the songs are very basic song structures. There's a lot of verse, chorus. Um, Lots of choruses. There's choruses in like almost pretty much every song. There's a lot of third choruses. Um, and I feel Slipknot used to be a little bit maybe more chaotic. But again, yeah, Corey's always saying, he's always done cleans, maybe not as much as on this album, but they've always been there. So I don't, I don't understand a lot of the dislike for that kind of stuff on here. Besides, again, the first and last tracks, which are very, very softer songs. Um, but other than that, I think that's pretty much all I've got written down here. But overall, I think it was pretty good. Like I said, quite a few of these tracks were very standout, and especially with Yin being like, I think that was a really good one. I really enjoyed that one. So Jordan, what are you thinking on this?
Yeah, man, I had pretty much the same sentiments there. I feel like a lot of this album is very, very Slipknot, but I feel like, yeah, like you said, Slipknot plus. Like, there's a lot of like extra. I feel like embellishments on like their music that they've added here and there that kind of really like, they've already had, like, a really big sound, but I feel like this just feels a little bit bigger and a little bit has, like, a bigger, wider scope, which I feel like maybe the prog elements have really kind of, like, upped that feeling because, there's a lot of, like, I don't know, there's just a lot of, like, different sections in the songs and, like, some of the riffs, they don't really repeat. There's just kind of, like, riffs that pop in here and there just kind of like to be cool like riffs and stuff and kind
Yeah,
of like uh s- bring all the different parts of the song together, which I thought was cool. I thought the bass really held it down, the bass and the drums and the guitars. I feel like the rhythm section in general was just really really well,
yeah.
really well like orchestrated on this album. um
Uh,
the f-
I
yeah.
did have a note on here that I forgot to mention about that. That it was like a counterpoint to what I was saying. My negative was that the song structures are very basic. The verse chorus thing. However, like at the same time, I think all the instruments hit like very hard. Like they did nothing. None of it sounded basic. Like instrumentally, like everything had a very nice presence and like really like clicked very well.
Yeah, the all the instruments, they didn't really just play straight beats or straight riffs or straight, chord progressions. They kind of like again, like I said, they kind of use like a prog approach to it to kind of make the parts of the songs s bigger instead of just, doing this for the sake of this and having this part or this like crazy solo or something. Like they really hone in on the songwriting, I feel like on this one. Um Although I feel like there were a couple of songs where the songwriting was a little bit too experimental, like you said. Um, I feel like whenever a band for as long as Slipknot, I mean, you kind of have to change things up a little bit. So I can definitely appreciate what is here. Um, I don't think I would remove too many of the songs or anything. I feel like it was just on the cusp of being a little bit too long, but it honestly didn't feel that long whenever we were listening to it. I feel like that just
Yeah,
speaks more to the
it,
songs
it went
themselves.
pretty quick, and I mean, Volume 3 is like an hour and 7 minutes. So
Yeah. Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit of fluff on there, but I think it's definitely needed to give a little bit of a break in between things. Um Maybe I don't even think I would remove the first track. Maybe I'd just move it somewhere else to
yeah,
maybe kind of break up a little bit of the rest of
yeah.
the album. But I
Like
feel like it already kind of did a little bit. Um, so I feel like
like I said,
that's
it's a
probably
bad
yeah,
opening track. Like that's just not what you want to like first jump into when you put on a Slipknot album.
yeah. I feel like that one could have just moved somewhere else. Maybe maybe just like a mid album kind of like interlude type thing because and maybe you could have just made it a little bit shorter too. It was just like I'm pretty sure that was the longest song on the album, and it really felt like that. It felt like the song was just kind of really dragged. So maybe they could have just shortened it up a little bit and thrown it like as an interlude, and that would have definitely worked a little bit better. Because I can definitely see a little bit of the threads from that song kind of
Yeah,
into a little bit more of the theme of the album. Maybe that's probably why they did that.
yeah, I can
Just
see
kind of
that.
as like I don't know what to call it as just it's like some it's like a little taste of what's to come, I guess. But at the same time, it really wasn't like anything else on the album, so it was just really weird. Um, I definitely liked Yen, like you said. Medicine for the Dead was really good. Um, H377, that one was really, really good. That reminded me of Spit It Out a little bit.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
the little bit of fast rapping and stuff. And I think I did like the last track, Finale. I think it was a pretty good album closer. It's definitely a little bit more of a cool down song, but they definitely gave it enough of an epic feel to
Yeah.
really close out the album and kind of give it a grand feeling. So I definitely like that one a lot as the last track on there.
Yeah,
Um,
especially if you look at the album as a like a progressive album, then it definitely fits because like it you know kind of like
it bookends the album a little bit.
yeah, it compares and also contrasts to like the very first song. So, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I definitely like that. Yeah, overall I really enjoyed this. It wasn't I feel like it was just a little bit too long and it got a little bit too long-winded. Yeah. So maybe just shorten it up a little bit more. Um and I think you they have a pretty good thing going there. Um I definitely really like the drums and the bass the most. I feel like those are the
Yeah.
standouts for me. So yeah, I didn't really find Corey's vocals too grating or anything. They were actually really really good. He's got like a really good singing voice, so
Yeah.
um uh, I'm not one of the people who's like, "Oh, I like his old vocals better," but I feel like it definitely fits, and yeah, he definitely kind of embellished a little bit here and there with a little oohs and ahs there and here, but yeah, nothing too bad. So I wouldn't say anything was bad on this album at all.
Yeah.
I think it's just very, very experimental, and I can definitely see why the fans would kind of be put off by it, especially from the first song. and it being so proggy and experimental. So, but I feel like maybe they might be going in like a more proggy direction, which is
Yeah.
that's fine by me.
But I mean, that makes sense for Slipknot too. Like, I don't, you know, I wouldn't want Slipknot to just make, you know, new metal all the time. You know, first
Yeah.
self-titled, you know, repeat. So I think, you know, adding like some little progressive elements is fine.
Yeah, and the aggressiveness and all the different Slipknot-esque elements are still there, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
trash cans and the turntables. There's a lot of turntable on this, and
yeah.
I feel like that really fit well with the guitars and the riffs and stuff. There's a couple cool like little scratches in there that I was like, oh, that kind of stands out and kind of gives it a little bit of a more of a extra Slipknot vibe. So there's definitely the Slipknot is there. Um, it's just a little bit extra. So I can't really complain about that really too much. So overall, it's pretty solid.
All right. So what would you rate this then?
I'm gonna give it a 7. I feel like the first track and some of like just the overall length, it kind of went on a little bit too much. But I still had a good time with it, and I think the guitars and the drums and the bass were all really really top notch. So um, I feel like the songwriting was really really good. It was just there's a little bit of fluff on there that could have been cut, and that could have really bumped it up for me. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm right there with you. I'm at a 7 as well. I'll give it a 7. 8 is a little. I just like, you know, 7 is a B. Seven's like a B for me. You know, so I think this is pretty B tier. Um, wise. Again, it has, you know, like I give him props for having some of my actual favorite like Slipknot moments on here from that Yin song. I really like that one. Um, and I do also I kind of appreciate the progressive elements that I feel in there. Um, 6 way too low. No, I don't. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there giving this a 6 or lower. And I don't think they deserve that. There's plenty of Slipknot on here. You know, if you're a Slipknot fan, there's like maybe like 3 or 4 songs you could cut out and put the rest on a playlist, and it's gonna sound like Slipknot. Like I don't know. So I think a 7 is a very fair rating.
Yeah, I don't think any Slipknot is ever lower than a 6, really.
Yeah, I think they do pretty well here. Um,
They're a size for a reason, you know.
yeah. So yeah, overall, you know, again, like having not a lot of high expectations, I think they pulled it off pretty well for me at least. So, good job, Slipknot.